I need to get this out because what happened yesterday is still making my hands shake with rage, and I honestly don't know if I should feel guilty or vindicated right now. Some backstory first. I'm 29, and I've been the family disappointment since I was about 22. Made some stupid decisions back then. Dropped out of college one semester before graduating to chase some business idea that failed spectacularly. Racked up debt. Had to move back home for a year while I figured things out. Classic screw-up story that my family has never let me forget. Meanwhile, my brother Caleb became a doctor, and my cousins are all these successful professionals making six figures while I'm working retail and living with roommates. The worst part is how they turn my mistakes into their entertainment. Every family gathering became a roast session, where Dad would tell the same stories about my failures to anyone who'd listen. How I wasted my college fund, how I disappointed them, how they wished they'd stopped at one kid. Mom would chime in with comments about how she tells people I work in healthcare, when really I'm stocking shelves at a pharmacy. They made my life their personal joke for years. What really pushed me over the edge was last Christmas when Dad told his coworkers I was in rehab, instead of admitting I just couldn't afford to visit because I was paying off student loans. When I found out through my cousin, Dad actually laughed and said it was easier than explaining the truth about how pathetic I was. Haven't seen my family in 2 years because every gathering turned into the same routine. Dad would make jokes about my failures. Mom would make passive-aggressive comments about how embarrassing I am, and everyone would laugh along. Last time I left early and told them I was done with their BS until they could treat me like a human being. But yesterday was Dad Hugo's 60th birthday, and my Aunt Isabella kept texting me for weeks, saying I needed to be there, that family is family, that Dad misses me even though he doesn't know how to show it. Total guilt trip, but it worked. Because part of me hoped maybe turning 60 had mellowed him out. Maybe he'd realized how cruel he'd been. Part of me also knew this might be the perfect opportunity I'd been waiting for. See, those 2 years away weren't just about avoiding their toxicity. I spent that time getting my act together in ways they couldn't even imagine. Finished my degree online, got promoted twice at work, saved money, built credit, made connections. Most importantly, I spent time learning about things that would matter when the day came to face them again. Because I always knew this day would come. I just had to be ready for it. Wrong. So freaking wrong. I pulled up to their house in my 2019 Toyota Camry that I've been busting my butt to pay off, feeling nervous but trying to stay positive. The backyard was packed with relatives, neighbors, family, friends, like 30 people total. Dad was holding court on the deck with a beer in his hand, telling some story that had everyone laughing. The moment he saw me get out of my car, his whole face changed. He pointed at me and shouted loud enough for the entire party to hear. The disappointment actually showed up, everyone. Hide your wallets. I swear the whole yard went quiet for like 3 seconds before people started nervously laughing. I could see neighbors I'd known since childhood looking uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to say anything. I tried to just walk over and say happy birthday, but Dad wasn't done. He grabbed my arm in front of all these people and announced, "Look everyone, this is why I drink." My biggest mistake is still breathing. The grabbing my arm part really got to me because it was so aggressive and public. Like he was putting me on display for everyone to mock. I could feel my face getting red, but I forced myself to stay calm because I knew what was coming later. Mama Liza was standing right there with her book club friends, and instead of telling him to stop, she started laughing and told them, "We told the neighbors you're in prison because it's less embarrassing than the truth." Her friends looked shocked, but she kept going, explaining how they've been making up stories about me for years because the reality was too humiliating to admit. That's when my Uncle Kason decided to join in, pointing at my jeans and announcing to everyone that he could smell the poverty from here and asking if I was still wearing the same clothes from high school. Everyone was cracking up like this was the funniest roast they'd ever seen. Someone actually yelled out, "Ask him," about his credit score, which made Dad laugh so hard he almost choked on his beer. Dad kept going. "You're 29 years old bagging groceries while your cousins are doctors and lawyers." Then Caleb chimed in about how I live with 4 roommates like a college freshman and have to share a bathroom. Aunt Isabella said her dog walker probably has a better life than me. The whole time people are taking videos on their phones like this is some comedy show. Dad grabbed another beer and told everyone the best part about his birthday was remembering that you exist, and everyone just roared with laughter again. Here's the thing though. I spent the last 2 years getting my life together specifically for moments like this. Not to impress them or win their approval, but to be in a position where I could finally respond the way they deserved. I've been planning what I'd do when they inevitably tried to humiliate me again. And yesterday felt like Christmas morning. During those 2 years, I did a lot of research, learned about things they thought I was too stupid to understand, found out information they assumed I'd never discover, made connections they didn't know I had, built resources they couldn't imagine I possessed. The whole time they were treating me like a failure, I was preparing for the day I could show them exactly who they were dealing with. The envelope wasn't something I put together last minute. I've been carrying different versions of it for months, waiting for the right moment. Every family event invitation, every holiday, every birthday, I've been ready. But something about Dad's 60th felt perfect. Big milestone, lots of witnesses, everyone feeling celebratory before the bomb dropped. I just smiled at Dad and pulled out this yellow manila envelope I'd been carrying in my jacket pocket, told him happy birthday and set it down on the picnic table right next to his cake. Then I walked away while they were all still laughing and making jokes about what pathetic gift the family failure probably brought this time. Walking to my car while they were still mocking me behind my back was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever done. Every instinct wanted me to turn around and scream at them, defend myself, make them understand how much they'd hurt me over the years. But I knew the envelope would do that, talking for me in about an hour when they finally decided to open it. The drive home felt surreal. Part of me was shaking with anger about how they treated me, but another part felt this weird, calm satisfaction knowing what was coming next. I kept checking my phone to see if anyone had texted yet, but it stayed quiet for hours. That was actually perfect because I knew they were all having such a good time roasting me that they probably forgot about the envelope completely. Around 1 a.m., my phone started going insane, like literally buzzing nonstop with calls and texts. Dad called me 52 times, I counted, because I wanted to remember this moment forever. The voicemails started angry and demanding, then confused and questioning, then straight up panicked sobbing. Son, please answer me. I'm sorry. We need to talk. Please call me back. Whatever this is, we can fix it. Mom sent like 20 texts begging me to explain what the envelope meant, saying she was sorry about the party, that Dad was just drunk and didn't mean it. Caleb called, demanding to know what I did and threatening to come to my apartment if I didn't answer. Even Uncle Kason texted asking if we could meet up to discuss things like adults, suddenly very concerned about family unity. The messages kept getting more desperate as the night went on. Dad sent a text at 3 a.m. saying he opened the envelope and needed to know where I got the information. Another one at 4 a.m. asking how long I'd known. Mom called me crying at 5 a.m., leaving a voicemail about how the family needed to stick together and work through this. What kills me is how quickly their tune changed. 6 hours earlier, I was their biggest disappointment, their embarrassment, their failure of a son who smelled like poverty. Now, suddenly, I'm important enough for 52 phone calls and everyone wants to have adult conversations about working things out. I turned my phone off and went to bed with the biggest smile I've had in years. But, I'll be honest, part of me felt scared about what I'd started. This wasn't just some petty revenge anymore. The panic tone in their voices told me the envelope hit exactly as hard as I hoped it would. Maybe harder. The thing is, I'm not sure what my next move should be now that the first domino has fallen. Part of me wants to let them sweat it out for a while longer because watching them panic after years of treating me like garbage feels incredible. But the rational part knows I need to deal with this situation eventually because what's in that envelope changes everything between us forever. What would you do? Because honestly, after being their punching bag for so long, having them desperately trying to reach me feels like the sweetest revenge I could ask for, but I know this is just the beginning of whatever comes next, and I'm not sure I'm ready for how ugly this is about to get. Update 1. Holy crap, you guys. I did not expect my last post to blow up like that. Thanks for all the support and the awards. Reading your comments helped me realize I'm not crazy for being angry about this situation. Some of you figured out what might be in the envelope, and honestly, you're not wrong. So quick update on what's been happening since the birthday disaster. The phone calls and texts haven't stopped. I'm talking hundreds of messages over the past 2 days. Dad has called me so many times I had to put his number on Do Not Disturb, but then he started calling from Mom's phone, Caleb's phone. Even got Uncle Kason to try calling me. Yesterday morning, I finally decided to answer one of Mom's calls because I figured I should at least hear what excuse they came up with this time. Big mistake. She immediately started crying and asking me where I got the information in the envelope, how long I'd known, why I didn't talk to them about it first instead of blindsiding everyone. I told her maybe I learned it from watching how they handle family problems, by humiliating people in public instead of having private conversations. She did not like that comparison and started getting defensive about how they never meant to hurt me that badly. She kept saying she didn't realize I was keeping track of everything, like that was somehow my fault for remembering how they treated me. Then she tried to minimize it by saying most of the things I documented were just jokes between family members and that I was taking everything too seriously. When I brought up the specific incident where she told her book club that I was too embarrassed to come to family gatherings because I couldn't afford nice clothes, she actually tried to claim she was defending me. Apparently, making up lies about why I wasn't there was supposed to be protective rather than humiliating. But then she doubled down and said that was different because they were just trying to save face with the neighbors when I disappeared for 2 years. Like my absence was some kind of family emergency that required a cover story. But here's where it gets interesting. She kept asking me what I wanted, what it would take to make this go away, like I was trying to blackmail them or something. When I told her I wasn't looking for anything except basic human respect, she actually got angry and said I was being dramatic and that families tease each other all the time. Families tease each other. That's what she called years of public humiliation. I hung up on her and she immediately called back screaming about how I can't just destroy people's lives because my feelings got hurt. The irony was completely lost on her. About an hour later, Caleb showed up at my apartment, just knocked on my door like he had every right to be there. When I opened it, he immediately started with this whole speech about how I was taking things too far, how Dad was just joking around at the party, how I need to think about what this could do to the family's reputation. I let him in because honestly, I wanted to hear him try to justify everything. He spent 20 minutes explaining how Dad has always been tough on me because he wants me to succeed, how the jokes at the party were just Dad's way of trying to motivate me to do better with my life. Apparently, getting called his biggest mistake in front of 30 people was supposed to be motivational. When I asked him how exactly being told I smell like poverty was supposed to motivate me, he actually said that Dad was just trying to push me to work harder and make more money. Like financial shaming in front of relatives was some kind of tough love strategy that I was too sensitive to appreciate. Then he tried the brother angle, talking about how we used to be close when we were kids, how he's always looked up to me, how he doesn't understand why I'm letting this tear our family apart. I reminded him about all the times he joined in on the jokes about my failures, and he claimed he was just trying to fit in with the family dynamic. He actually said he thought I knew it was all just harmless teasing, and that he never realized I was taking it so personally. This is the same guy who once told his medical school friends that his brother was a cautionary tale about what happens when you don't apply yourself in college. He kept asking me what my endgame was, like I owed him some kind of strategic explanation for finally standing up for myself. When I told him my endgame was getting treated with basic human dignity, he said that was always available if I just participated more in family events instead of sulking. When I pointed out that they seemed way more concerned about protecting themselves than understanding why I was upset, he got defensive and said of course they're worried because they don't know what I'm capable of anymore. Apparently, the envelope proved that I'm not the harmless failure they thought I was. That comment right there showed me everything I needed to know about how they really see me. I asked Caleb if he wanted to know what was actually in the envelope, and he immediately said yes, like he'd been waiting for me to offer. So I told him it wasn't just one thing, it was a collection of things I'd been gathering for the past 2 years. Screenshots of social media posts where family members made jokes about me to their friends. A recording of Dad telling his coworkers I was in rehab when he thought no one would tell me. Photos of family gatherings where they deliberately didn't invite me but posted about what a great time everyone was having. I showed him some of the screenshots on my phone. Mom posting on Facebook about how thankful she was for her successful doctor son, while pointedly not mentioning having another child. Dad's Instagram story from last Thanksgiving, showing the whole family at dinner with the caption, "Grateful for my real family." Uncle Kaysen's LinkedIn post about being proud of his nephew, the doctor. Each piece of evidence I showed him made his face get a little more pale. He kept trying to explain them away. Maybe Mom just forgot to mention me. Maybe Dad was just focused on gratitude. But when I pulled up the recording of Dad laughing with his coworkers about how he tells people I'm getting treatment instead of admitting I work retail, Caleb finally went quiet. The recording was brutal because you could hear Dad actually laughing while he explained how embarrassing it would be to admit his son stocks shelves at 29 years old. His coworkers were asking if I was getting better, and Dad just kept playing along with the rehab story. But the thing that really made them panic was the guest list I'd compiled for my own 30th birthday party next month. A party I've been planning specifically to return the favor of public humiliation they've given me for years. See, I've spent 2 years rebuilding my social network, making connections with people they care about impressing. Their neighbors, Dad's coworkers, Mom's book club friends, people from their church, Caleb's medical school classmates, even some of Hugo's old army buddies I tracked down on Facebook. The envelope contained invitation mock-ups showing exactly who I plan to invite to hear my side of the family story. The guest list wasn't random. Every single person on it was someone who my family had specifically mentioned wanting to impress. Dad's new supervisor, Mom's book club president, the neighbors who they've been putting on a perfect family act for, Caleb's residency director. I'd spent months researching these people through social media, finding mutual connections, even striking up casual conversations with some of them at community events. Dad's supervisor and I had a great chat about military history at a veterans dinner last month. Mom's book club president seemed interested when I mentioned I'd love to share family stories at gatherings. Caleb's face went completely white when I explained this. He started talking about how this would ruin Dad's career reputation, how Mom would be humiliated in front of her social circle, how it could affect his residency if his colleagues knew about the family drama. I told him that's exactly the point. I want them to experience what it feels like to be publicly embarrassed by family. The difference is my party would be telling the truth about how they've treated me, while they've been spreading lies about me for years. The beautiful irony is that while they've been telling people I'm a failure, who can't manage basic adult responsibilities, I've been quietly building relationships with the exact people whose opinions they care most about. When I asked him why they couldn't just apologize without conditions, he said they needed assurance that I wouldn't keep holding their past mistakes over their heads forever. Apparently, even their apologies come with requirements that I make it easy for them. When I told him I wasn't interested in negotiations and that my invitations were going out this weekend, he completely lost it, started yelling about how I was being vindictive and cruel, how this wasn't the brother he grew up with, how I was becoming just as bad as I claimed they were. I walked him to the door and told him he had until my birthday to figure out how he wanted this to play out. He slammed the door on his way out. The crazy part is that I haven't even sent the invitations yet. Just the threat of doing it has them all spinning out of control. Dad left another voicemail last night begging me to meet him for coffee so we could talk this through man to man. Mom texted asking if there was anything she could do to make up for the years of jokes. Uncle Kaysen actually drove to my apartment building this morning and waited in the parking lot for 2 hours trying to catch me when I left for work. When I saw him there, I just waved and drove past him. The desperation is honestly satisfying after years of them acting like I didn't matter. Aunt Isabella has been sending me long text messages about family forgiveness and moving forward. She keeps saying she had no idea things had gotten so bad and wishes she'd known sooner so she could have helped mediate. But you know what? I'm not interested in their sudden change of heart now that they realize I have the power to embarrass them the same way they embarrassed me. They had 2 years to reach out and make things right, and instead, they used that time to keep spreading lies about me. The funniest part is watching how quickly their story changed from "I'm an over-emotional failure" to "I'm a dangerous mastermind who's been plotting against them for years." Suddenly, they're all afraid of what else I might have documented. Dad's latest voicemail actually asked me what I want from them. Like, this is some kind of negotiation instead of consequences for their actions. He offered to make a public apology at church, to tell his coworkers the truth about my job, to start including me in family events again. All conditional on me canceling the party, of course. The party invitations are getting mailed tomorrow morning. I've already rented the venue and hired catering. I even ordered a custom cake that says "Celebrating Family Honesty" in big, bold letters. It's happening whether they want to participate or not. I'll update again after the invitations go out because I have a feeling things are about to get much more intense. Update 2. Well, folks, the invitations went out 3 days ago, and the aftermath has been absolutely wild. I'm talking total meltdown mode from my entire family. Some of you in the comments called this perfectly. You said once other people got involved, the family would lose their minds. You were so right. First off, thanks for all the support on my last update. Reading your stories about similar family situations helped me realize I'm not overreacting. Shout out to the commenter who said revenge is a dish best served at a birthday party. You're a genius, and I'm stealing that line. So here's what happened after I mailed those invitations Tuesday morning. I sent them to 43 people total. Every single person was chosen specifically because my family has mentioned wanting to impress them over the past few years. Dad's work colleagues, Mom's social circle, Caleb's medical school connections, even some family friends who my parents have been putting on a perfect family act for since I was a teenager. The invitations themselves were designed to look completely normal. Elegant cardstock, professional printing, the whole thing. The wording was simple. I'm celebrating my 30th birthday and would love to share some important family stories with the people who matter most to my loved ones. RSVP requested. Cocktails and dinner provided. Dress code is semi-formal. Nothing threatening or dramatic. Just a polite invitation to hear some family stories. By Wednesday afternoon, my phone started buzzing with responses from the invited guests. Dad's supervisor from the Veterans Affairs office texted me asking if everything was okay with my father, because he seemed very stressed at work lately and had been making unusual comments about family situations. Mom's book club president called me directly to confirm she received the invitation and mentioned that Mom had been acting strange during their last meeting, cutting conversations short and seeming distracted. But the response that really got things rolling was from Caleb's residency director. Apparently, he's been mentoring Caleb for the past year and was genuinely excited to meet more of his family. He called Caleb personally to thank him for having his brother include him in the celebration and mentioned how nice it was to see such close family bonds in medical families. That's when everything exploded. Caleb showed up at my apartment Wednesday night looking like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't even wait for me to invite him in, just pushed past me and started pacing around my living room like a caged animal. He spent the first 10 minutes ranting about how I was destroying his career, how his residency director now thinks there's family drama that could affect his performance, how he might lose his position because of my selfishness. I reminded him that I hadn't said anything negative to his director yet. The man was just excited to attend a family celebration. If Caleb was worried about what might come out at the party, maybe he should have thought about that before participating in years of public humiliation. That's when he finally broke down and told me the real reason they've all been treating me like garbage for so long. Apparently, it started when I dropped out of college because Dad was furious about having to explain to his military buddies why his son was a quitter. Dad has always defined himself by his service record and his tough guy image, and having a son who couldn't finish what he started was devastating to his reputation. Caleb said Dad started making jokes about my failures as a way to control the narrative. If he was the one making fun of me, then other people would see him as disappointed, but strong, rather than just embarrassed. Mom went along with it because she didn't want to undermine Dad's authority in the family. The whole thing snowballed from there until treating me like the family joke became their normal way of handling their embarrassment. I asked him why he participated instead of defending me, and he actually admitted that having a screw-up brother made him look better by comparison. When people heard about my failures, they were more impressed by his successes. He said he never thought about how it was affecting me because I seemed to just disappear instead of fighting back. Well, surprise. I was planning my comeback the whole time. The conversation lasted almost 3 hours. Caleb tried every angle he could think of, appealing to our childhood bond, offering to pay for family therapy, even suggesting he could talk Dad into writing me a formal apology letter. But every suggestion came with the same condition: cancel the party and pretend this never happened. When I told him the party was definitely happening and that I was looking forward to sharing the truth with his colleagues, he completely lost it, started yelling about how I was being vindictive and cruel, how this wasn't the brother he grew up with, how I was destroying the family for my own ego. I walked him to the door and told him he still had 3 weeks to figure out how he wanted to handle this situation. He could either start telling people the truth about how they've treated me, or wait for me to tell my version at the party. His choice. Thursday morning, Dad finally showed up at my workplace, just walked into the pharmacy where I work and demanded to speak with me privately. My manager actually had to escort him to the break room because he was making customers uncomfortable with how agitated he looked. Dad spent an hour trying to convince me to call off the party. He started with the authority angle, telling me I was being disrespectful and that families don't air their dirty laundry in public. When that didn't work, he tried guilt, talking about how this was going to hurt Mom and damage relationships he'd spent years building with his colleagues and neighbors. He actually brought up my childhood, reminding me of all the times he coached my little league teams and helped with school projects. Said he couldn't understand how I'd turned into someone who would betray his family like this after everything he'd done for me over the years. The manipulation was so obvious it was almost insulting to my intelligence. But then he made the mistake of getting honest with me. He admitted that he'd been telling people at work that I was dealing with addiction issues because he was ashamed to admit his son was working retail at 29. He said it was easier to let people think I was sick rather than explain that I was just a disappointment who couldn't get his life together after all the opportunities they'd given me. The way he said it was so casual, like lying about me to his colleagues was just a normal thing that any parent would do. He actually seemed surprised when I got angry about it, like he expected me to understand that protecting his reputation was more important than respecting me as a person. I told him I understood perfectly, which is exactly why I was planning to set the record straight at my party. He could either start telling the truth now or explain to his coworkers later why he'd been lying to them for years. That's when he finally dropped the nice guy act and showed me who he really is. Started yelling about how I was an ungrateful little brat who didn't appreciate everything he'd sacrificed for this family. Said I was jealous of Caleb's success and trying to drag everyone down to my level because I couldn't handle being the family failure. He told me I was proving his point about being a disappointment, that only a selfish loser would threaten to embarrass his family in front of their friends and colleagues. He said if I went through with this party, I'd be proving that every joke they ever made about me was justified. I looked him straight in the eye and told him that if that's how he really feels, then he has nothing to worry about at the party. I'll just be telling everyone the truth about who I am and how my family treats me. If he thinks that makes him look bad, maybe the problem isn't me. He stormed out of the break room and I haven't heard from him since. But mom has been sending me text messages every few hours begging me to reconsider. She keeps saying the family is falling apart and that this is going to destroy relationships that took years to build. She offered to host a family dinner where everyone could apologize properly if I would just cancel the party. The funny thing is that she still doesn't get it. She thinks this is about me wanting an apology. It's not. It's about consequences. They had years to treat me with basic respect and chose not to. Now they get to experience what it feels like to have their reputation threatened by family members. Uncle Kaysen called me yesterday, asking if we could meet for coffee to discuss this situation like adults. When I asked him what there was to discuss, he said he wanted to help me understand Dad's perspective and find a compromise that works for everyone. He kept emphasizing how this was affecting the whole extended family and that my cousins were asking questions about why there was so much drama. I told him I already understand Dad's perspective perfectly. He's embarrassed by me and has been lying to people about my life for years. As for compromise, they're welcome to attend the party and participate in the conversation, or they can stay home and let me tell their story without their input. The party is still happening in 17 days. I've already heard back from 31 people who are planning to attend, including all the people my family is most worried about impressing. Several of Dad's co-workers, most of Mom's book club, 3 of Caleb's colleagues, and even some church friends who've known our family for years. The venue is booked, the catering is arranged, and I've spent the past few days organizing my presentation. Because yes, I'm doing a presentation, complete with screenshots, recordings, and a timeline of how my family has treated me over the years. I want everyone to see exactly what kind of people they've been dealing with. My family has 16 days left to decide how they want this to play out. They can start being honest with people now, or wait for me to reveal everything at the party. Either way, the truth is coming out. Final update. Holy crap. Reddit, I can't believe I'm actually writing this final update. The party happened, and it was everything I hoped it would be and more. I'm still processing everything that went down, but I wanted to share the conclusion of this insane saga while it's still fresh in my mind. First off, huge thanks to everyone who followed this story and gave me support. Reading your comments over the past few weeks kept me motivated when I started second-guessing myself. Special shout out to the person who said my family would probably try to show up and cause a scene. You called it perfectly. So the party was last Saturday night. I rented a nice event space at a local hotel, nothing too fancy but definitely classier than anything my family could complain about. 34 people showed up out of the 43 I invited, which was honestly better turnout than I expected. The guest list was everything I'd hoped for. Dad's supervisor and 3 co-workers from the Veterans Affairs Office, 6 people from Mom's book club, including the president, Caleb's residency director, and 2 colleagues, several neighbors my parents have been trying to impress for years. Even some family friends from church who've known us since I was a kid. I spent the first hour just mingling and making small talk, letting people get comfortable with drinks and appetizers. Everyone was asking where my family was, and I kept saying they were running late, but should be there soon. The anticipation was honestly delicious. About an hour into the party, Dad, Mom, and Caleb finally showed up. They looked like they were walking into their own funeral. I could see them scanning the room and recognizing all the faces. People whose opinions they'd spent years caring about. Dad's face went completely white when he spotted his supervisor chatting with Mom's book club president. The 3 of them huddled together near the entrance for a few minutes, clearly having some kind of heated discussion. I watched Mom gesturing frantically while Dad kept shaking his head. Caleb looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. I walked over to greet them and thanked them for coming to my celebration. Mom immediately started whispering about how we needed to talk privately before I did anything crazy. Dad kept looking around the room like he was planning escape routes. Caleb just stood there sweating despite the air conditioning. But I'd waited 2 years for this moment and I wasn't backing down. At 8 o'clock, I clinked my glass and asked everyone to gather around for a special presentation. I thanked everyone for coming and explained how much it meant to me to have people there who were important to my family. Then I started telling my story. I began with the college dropout situation and how it affected my relationship with my family. Explained how Dad was embarrassed to tell his military friends that his son couldn't finish what he started. Showed them screenshots of social media posts where family members celebrated Caleb's achievements while completely ignoring my existence. The room got very quiet very quickly. Then I played the recording of Dad telling his coworkers I was in rehab. You could hear him laughing as he explained how it was easier to lie about addiction than admit his son stocks shelves for a living. Several people in the room visibly cringed when they heard their colleague talking about his own child that way. One of his coworkers actually turned to look at Dad with this expression of complete disgust. I showed them the Facebook posts, where Mom bragged about her successful doctor son while never mentioning having another child. The Instagram stories showing family dinners with captions about being grateful for real family. The LinkedIn posts from Uncle Kason about how good parenting pays off, with photos of just Caleb. I had printed out some of the worst examples and passed them around the room so people could see the dates and details clearly. Watching Mom's book club friends read her posts about only having one child while I stood right there was absolutely priceless. But the part that really got to people was when I described the birthday party 3 weeks ago. How Dad grabbed my arm in front of 30 people and called me his biggest mistake. How Mom told her friends they'd rather lie and say I was in prison than admit the truth about my life. How Uncle Kason said he could smell the poverty on me. I could see Dad getting redder and redder as I talked. But he couldn't say anything because everything I was sharing was absolutely true. Mom kept looking around the room at her book club friends who were staring at her with shocked expressions. When I finished the presentation, the room was dead silent for about 10 seconds. Then Dad's supervisor stood up and asked if he could speak with Dad privately outside. Two of Mom's book club friends got up and left without saying goodbye. Caleb's residency director approached him with what looked like a very serious expression. That's when Dad finally exploded. Started yelling about how I was a vindictive little brat who was destroying the family because I couldn't handle a few jokes. Said I was proving every point they'd ever made about me being selfish and unstable. But here's the beautiful part. He was saying all of this in front of his coworkers and neighbors. People who had just heard 2 hours of evidence about how my family treats me were now watching Dad call me names and throw a tantrum in public. His supervisor actually stepped forward and told Dad he needed to calm down and think about where he was. When Dad turned on him and started ranting about family loyalty, his supervisor just shook his head and walked away. Mom tried damage control, telling people that families have complicated dynamics and that I was only showing one side of the story. But when someone asked her directly if she'd really told people I was in prison, she couldn't deny it. Caleb tried to explain that the family was just trying to motivate me to do better with my life, but his residency director asked him if he thought public humiliation was an appropriate medical practice. The party essentially ended with my family storming out while most of the guests stayed to talk with me. Dad's supervisor apologized for not realizing what was happening and said he understood now why Dad had seemed so stressed lately. Mom's book club friends said they were horrified by what they'd learned and didn't know how to process it. But the best reaction came from Caleb's residency director. He pulled me aside and said he was concerned about Caleb's judgment and character based on what he'd witnessed. Said anyone who would participate in systematically humiliating a family member might not have the empathy necessary for medical practice. Since the party, the consequences have been rolling in steadily. Dad's supervisor called him into a meeting Monday morning to discuss his behavior and how it reflects on the office. Apparently lying about family addiction issues to colleagues crosses some kind of professional boundary. Word is getting around the office about what really happened, and people are looking at Dad differently now. Mom got kicked out of her book club. The president called her Sunday morning and said the group had discussed it and didn't feel comfortable having someone who would lie about their own child in their social circle. She's also been disinvited from several upcoming social events because people don't trust her anymore. But the biggest consequence has been for Caleb. His residency director scheduled a formal review of his character and judgment. Apparently, there are ethics standards for medical residents, and participating in family abuse might violate them. Word has spread through his program about what happened at the party. He called me crying Tuesday night, begging me to write a letter saying I exaggerated everything. Several of our neighbors have also reached out to me since the party. Apparently, my parents have been telling people in the neighborhood various stories about why I don't visit. Everything from drug problems to being in legal trouble. Now that the truth is out, people are questioning everything my parents have told them over the years. I told him no. Uncle Kason sent me a long text message about how I'd destroyed the family and that everyone was questioning their relationships with each other now. Several cousins have reached out asking for my side of the story because they're hearing conflicting accounts from different family members. The funniest part is that Dad tried to call me Wednesday, claiming he wanted to apologize and work things out. But when I answered, he immediately started demanding that I contact his supervisor and tell him I made everything up. When I refused, he went right back to calling me selfish and vindictive. Mom has been sending me articles about forgiveness and family healing, but she still hasn't actually apologized for anything she did. She just keeps saying she hopes I'm happy now that I've gotten my revenge. And honestly, I am happy. For the first time in years, I feel like I have my power back. They spent so long treating me like I was worthless and didn't matter, but it turns out I mattered enough for them to lie about me for years. I mattered enough for them to create elaborate cover stories rather than just ignoring me. The truth is finally out there. People they cared about impressing now know exactly who they are and how they treat their family members. Dad's tough guy military image is ruined. Mom's perfect family act is exposed. Caleb's medical career might be damaged because of his character issues. They're experiencing consequences for their actions for the first time in years. And I'm here for all of it. Some people have asked me if I feel guilty or if I regret exposing them so publicly. The answer is absolutely not. They had years to treat me with basic human respect and chose not to. They could have apologized privately at any point and chose not to. They could have stopped lying about me to their friends and chose not to. This was never about forgiveness or healing or moving forward as a family. This was about consequences. And now they're facing them. I'm not interested in reconciliation or family therapy or any of their attempts to go back to the way things were. They showed me who they really are over and over again for years. I finally showed everyone else who they are too. The family reputation they cared so much about protecting is ruined, and they did it to themselves.